The Sarasota County Bar Association is a proud partner in bringing you Law in Sarasota. With voluntary membership of over 900 lawyers and judges, the Sarasota County Bar Association is your community's leader in advancing legal professionalism, practice development, and public service. Visit www.sarasotabar.com for more information and to use the online directory list to find an attorney.
This program is brought to you by a grant from the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Sarasota County Bar Association. The Education Channel produces the program and broadcasts from its state-of-the-art campus on Beneva Road. They make this program possible. Hello, I'm Senior Judge Lee Haworth. Today we have as our guest the newest judge in the 12th Judicial Circuit. Now, the majority of judges obtain their position through an appointment process. They're interviewed by a judicial nominating committee composed of lawyers and non-lawyers. Then 3 to 6 names are submitted to the governor, and he makes the final decision. Statistically, a majority of trial judges get their office from the governor's appointment. However, that is not the only way an attorney can become a judge. All trial judges in Florida are on the ballot every 6 years, so voters get to choose who they want on the bench. Usually, most judges, when they take office, keep it until they retire or until they decide to return to private practice. Statewide, it is rare for a sitting judge to be opposed and unelected. Our guest today, Maria Ruhl, is the exception. She ran against an incumbent and she won. She takes office in January of 2019. No doubt many of our viewers voted for her. She won by 64% of the vote in Sarasota County and 51% in Manatee County. We'd like to hear how she did this and what issues she thinks were most resonant with the electorate. And we've invited Judge-elect Ruhl to the program to learn more about her, what her life has been up to this point, her legal experience and education, her interest outside of the law and the courtroom, and what she sees as a challenge once she takes the bench. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about you and allow you to talk about yourself. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us where you were born and about things we should know about you in that respect.
Well, I was born in Venezuela. We moved to the United States in 1981. I'm the youngest of 7 girls. Luckily, my parents brought us over before today.
How was that adjustment when you came from, of course you were pretty young, but still?
Yeah, I was 3. I was 3 turning 4. I don't remember much, I don't remember much, but it was a big adjustment coming from another country, learning a new language.
Especially challenging for your older sisters, I would imagine.
Yes, and we are the big family.
So you're one of those immigrant folks, huh?
We are. I am.
So tell me about how you liked Broward County and where you wound up living. What cities?
We moved directly into Broward County. It was Pembroke Lakes, the Pembroke Pines area, and it was a small town. It was all pre-development there. It was there was cows in the backyard, and there was the Everglades wasn't too far. Now it's absolutely overdeveloped, but I had a good education. It gave me the opportunity, living in that area, to have a very good education.
So Broward County schools were kind to you then?
Yes, they were very kind. I've been reflecting on that a lot lately, and my teachers, I thank God for the teachers I had. I had a mom who didn't speak English, who was trying her hardest, bless her heart. She was trying her hardest, but she wasn't that involved parent. She wasn't, she didn't know if I was doing my homework or not, but I really did have excellent public school teachers.
And how about your parents? Were they your father working and your mom working too, or she was basically a housewife then?
No, my mom was working. My dad abandoned her when we were younger, so at some point, so that made a tough situation a little tougher. But
she was a single mom raising 7 kids.
divorced now, but yeah, so it was tough. And so we all learned early on to work hard and to contribute to the family and to help my mom. But my mom did whatever she could. She worked in factories, she cleaned houses, she did a little bit of everything.
Okay, so tell me about, obviously you probably still have relatives in Venezuela,
Yes.
and must be a lot of turmoil, economic, social there, and how do you feel
It's awful.
about how things developed for you coming to America?
I'm glad. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful, especially not just for the opportunity, but with seeing what's happening in Venezuela. And it's just awful. And it's hard to see people suffer in that fashion when it's really unnecessary.
Well, we have 31 judges in the circuit, county and circuit judges, and I have to say, you are probably our only bilingual judge.
I've heard that and I've learned that.
That's going to be wonderful for us. So tell me about your law school education or your undergraduate first. Where did you go to undergraduate school?
Well, I started at what was Broward Community College because I thought that was the best route to go to a community college. I did my first 2 years, back when it was a 2-year school, now everything's a 4-year school. I went to BCC and then I went to FIU. And then after FIU, it was, I had applied to Nova and St. Thomas, and I went to St. Thomas. And it was, I had an excellent law school experience.
What classes, subjects did you really enjoy in law school?
Well, I didn't like contracts because I had that, that scary contracts professor.
Yeah, I know.
He's the one that...
All mine were scary, so...
Yes, they were all scary, but he was that professor that would make people cry and make people quit. And it's funny because he's now a good friend, but I didn't think I was going to survive. But I ended up really enjoying contracts. I enjoyed everything. Like, I couldn't get enough of it, but if I had to pick one, it was the legal research and writing. That was really my favorite.
So when did you graduate law school?
It was in 2005.
Okay, and I know you're married, so tell us about how you met your husband and your family.
We were married in 2010, and we met. He was an acquaintance. We're both in private practice.
Well, he's a lawyer.
He's a lawyer.
Yes.
And we just, as when you're in private practice, you run into the same characters all
Met him in Broward?
No, here. It was in Charlotte County.
How did you wind up in Charlotte?
I was working for a private firm in Fort Myers, and I was the new attorney, so I got to go to Punta Gorda, to Charlotte County. So it was through my trips to Charlotte County that I met my husband, Rick.
So let's talk about your practice. What areas of the law did you were attractive to you, and that you spent time developing your trial skills?
Well, it was predominantly in criminal law, so criminal defense. But the firm in my firm, we handle personal injury, criminal law, family law, and immigration. Is
that true for your husband too? He does the same?
He does the same, but he's not going to be doing immigration.
How did you get your immigration training? Where do you go for that? Does St. Thomas have it?
They do, but I didn't do it through law school. It was more of learning through CLEs, more of self-learning, having good mentors. The equivalent of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, FACTL, for immigration, it's AILA. It's the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and it's a national organization, and they put on really good CLEs. But most of the legal education programs are really good, but they put on very good CLEs. They have a lot of resources. They have a mentor program. So it was through AILA that I did learn a lot.
Until recently, we had an influx of youngsters coming in from foreign countries, predominantly Mexico, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Guatemala. Did you get to represent any of those?
I did, and they're heartbreaking cases. We don't live in an area where if you are Hispanic, we're not necessarily pointing to Sarasota and Bradenton as a place to go to. So if somebody's coming here, it's largely based on family. A lot of the bigger cities, the metropolitan areas, are the ones that are going to get a lot of those children, the unaccompanied minors. But I did represent a handful of those. I was fortunate to be able to represent some of those kids, and it's just heartbreaking stories.
Well, with your husband being a lawyer and you being a judge, how is that going to be resolved? What are you going to be doing to try to avoid the conflicts that would naturally occur? It won't happen so much if you're doing certain divisions of the court, but have you all talked about how you're going to try to work that out?
Well, as far as I think there's rules that already exist that he can't practice in front of me. So we have discussed it, whatever. He can't be in front of me, he can't be in front of me. We have discussed it. I don't think it'll be an issue.
Yeah, I think it's always, we've had, one time we had the public defender married to a circuit judge,
Right.
Becky Titus and Elliot Metcalf, and they had some interesting cases that he would appeal her rulings on some things, or his office did, and it made for a lot of fun times in the court.
Oh, and I'm sure made for more fun times at home.
Well, Elliot used to say he sleeps with his judge, so. In any event, any particular cases that you found rewarding, particularly that are types of cases other than immigration that, or maybe the integration cases that you thought were very rewarding and making you feel good to be a lawyer?
I think when you're in private practice, you're fortunate in that you have a lot of discretion and flexibility in the type of cases you can take and cannot take. And it gives, at least for myself, I can't speak for anybody else, but it gave me the opportunity to be able to help people that otherwise maybe wouldn't have had an opportunity to get a lawyer in private practice. So I'd pick and choose if somebody came in and I know they couldn't afford it, or you go through and you try to vet them as best you can. Some of the unaccompanied minor cases, I would do it either pro bono or I call low bono type representation. But I have a few cases where, as a lawyer, legally, I was very proud of myself for doing what I found. I was able to do good research and get a good result. So to me, personally, those are the ones that stick out mostly in my mind. I had a case, it was in Charlotte County, and it was a motion to suppress that I was representing the defendant on, but it was a legal issue it was a statutory construction issue, and I went and I had a friend that was working in Tallahassee. I had him pull the notes from the legislative history. It's probably only fascinating to me and you, but I was very proud to win that type of case. And beyond that, beyond just a legal win, being able to help someone who needed that representation and couldn't afford it, and having the effective representation. There's so many to speak of, but there are a lot of cases where there's some cases where somebody didn't, let's say somebody didn't speak English, and they're being taken advantage of. And being able to guide them through the system and get the necessary result, was always very rewarding.
Well, you're an example of one of the many lawyers that we've actually had on the program that have spent enormous amount of times helping people that really can't afford lawyers and getting good results for them. So you told us you're married, you got kids?
Yes, we have 3 boys at home, ages 13, 8, and 7.
And they're all in school in South County area?
Yeah, we have 2 at Laurel Nokomis and 1 at Oak Park.
So what kind of things do you do for fun? What kind of hobbies you have, or the kids? What are the kids into?
The kids are into karate, karate and swimming, but it seems like lately they have so much homework. They come from school with so much homework that it doesn't leave time for anything else. But we try to travel as a family and do things on the weekend. We like to get away, not as often as we'd
I
like
think
to.
you've told me too, you have a pretty strict family policy about the use of computers and the internet and all that.
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit about your rules in your family on that, because I think a lot of parents would like to hear that somebody's taking a strong stand.
Oh, yeah. The little ones don't have a computer. The older one he has a computer for schoolwork only, but nothing is being used unless it's being supervised, unless it's in a common area.
And no cell phones.
No, there's no, there's no cell phones.
They must scream bloody murder about that, because
Yeah, we're not popular parents. No, there's no cell phones.
well, that's kind of like being a judge. You're not going to be popular, if you do the right things.
Right.
Make some people happy, but not all of them. All right, so you decided to run for judge. When was that decision made?
It was, I think most attorneys, it crosses their mind, especially when they're upset about something. But or not. Sometimes it's because you're upset, or sometimes it's because you want to move up. You want to move on in your career. But it had been something that I had been thinking about for a while. I didn't think I'd have the opportunity. I just didn't ever think of really doing it. I never really did, and it just. I can honestly tell you, it almost seemed like an overnight decision.
Well, you also had you had a law office at the time in Bradenton,
Yes.
and you had something in Sarasota also.
Yeah, we have a satellite office in Sarasota. My main office was in Bradenton, and my husband's main office is in Port Charlotte.
So when you were out campaigning, what sort of questions did you get from the people that you would meet?
It was. I can tell you, while there's a level that it was just awful. It's just a lot. It's a lot. You're trying to run a practice. You're trying to run your household. It's a lot, and
It's not cheap either.
No, it's not at all.
Can you share approximately how much you had to, your campaign had to raise, or?
I can't remember exactly right now, but I think overall, the projected amount that I was told I needed to have was between $100,000 and $150,000, and that was a little shocking. But I think it ended up being about $64,000. A large chunk of it was percentage-wise. The biggest chunk was from me, my family, and other donors.
Well, I know that when a person runs for judge, there's certain things you cannot do. And why don't you explain what some of those rules are and how difficult it is sometimes to convince people that you have to follow those rules?
There are so many rules, and I had a book.
And they're special for judge candidates as opposed to the regular politicians.
Oh yes, Canon 7, and it's a book. It was, I printed out the book. It was, probably an inch thick, and I left it in the car. But I had it all tabbed and highlighted. I'm one of those, and yeah, the very politicians that you're not a politician, but you are a politician, and the same candidates that are running were always intrigued in why I couldn't do the things that they were doing, or I couldn't answer certain questions. It's because you are restrained. There are a lot of rules, and my philosophy in going into this was, well, if I want to be a judge, it wouldn't be wise to start by not following the rules that exist. So, I was trying very hard to commit that whole book to memory, but it's difficult. There are so many things you can't do, and when push came to shove, and if somebody didn't believe me, there was many times I printed out the JEAC opinions, and I said, this is why I can't do that. And it would take that much to convince someone. There was one time that I actually emailed the JEAC.
No, that's the Judicial Ethics
Advisory
Committee.
And during a campaign, there is a duty judge, let's say, on call to immediately respond to a question. That's how serious they take it. And if you can't email, there's a hotline. So it is no joke. They will answer. There was a Saturday. I mean, midnight, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I was getting responses immediately. And when someone didn't believe me, as far as, oh well, you just don't want to answer, you email them and that you get a response, and you give it to whoever it is that's questioning you.
Well, all the hot button issues that we have in our society, questions about the death penalty, about abortion, about land use issues, and all those things that are so critical to many people, they want to know how you're going to rule on it, and they're going to want to know what your opinion is on it. So tell me how you feel about the rule that says judges have to set aside their personal beliefs and follow the law. What's your take on that?
It exists for a reason, and if you're not able to do that, if you're not able, going into this, if you're not able to put it aside, then this is not a position you should be in. People, they want to know. They also want to know about red tide, which is always funny to me. But we have to be better than that. It's not about my wants, my feelings, my beliefs. It's about the law.
When I ran the first time in 1988, one of my opponents put an ad out saying that if he got selected, they're not going to have any offshore drilling. In any event, the questions you could ask, we obviously have personal opinions and beliefs as judges, but we also learn things about implicit bias. What do you know about implicit bias?
Well, I think what it is, we all have biases, whether we want to or whether we recognize them knowingly or unknowingly. We grow up forming these opinions and their biases, and we have to become aware of, it's our responsibility to become aware of them and to put a stop to it. But they exist, whether we recognize it or whether we like it or not, they exist. We just have to become more, I believe, as a judge, I will have to become more self-aware as to what my implicit biases are.
We have 5 divisions of circuit court. We have felony division, we have juvenile, family, probate, and civil. And you've been assigned to the civil division in Sarasota. So tell me what steps you're taking to prepare yourself for that assignment.
Well, when you become a judge, whether appointed or elected, you get a mentor judge. And Chief Judge Williams has been my mentor judge. He actually called me immediately the next day. He was one of the first phone calls that I received. Actually, Judge Singer was the first phone call I received.
Because he's with the county court. He knows about the election results.
Yes, and I love him. But Chief Judge Williams was the next phone call, and he was very welcoming. And he immediately told me what he wanted to do. He suggested that he made himself available, number one, at any time. But we set up a schedule to go over anything and all things. We've been meeting a few times a month. And then apart from that, I've been shadowing Judge Carroll and Judge McHugh and Judge Mercurio. It's just happened because of the scheduling. I've ended up a lot with Judge Carroll, but he has been magnificent. I have been shadowing through every type of court events and at every type of court day, their uniform motion calendars, their docket soundings, their pretrials, just to see how they manage the dockets and how they work benchmark and all that.
Well, one of the things that they don't teach in law school and you don't get as a lawyer practice is case management.
Yes.
That's a major part of what judges do, is to make sure the cases flow smoothly through the system and don't get backlogged or clogged up. And I think that's really the focus of where they've been directing you. There's also the substantive law area about civil law, which obviously you'll be able to do. But that's one of the challenges of incoming judges, is being able to learn how to manage cases and make sure cases don't languish forever,
Right.
and don't get the attention that they require in the court system. So what qualities do you think makes a good judge?
I think being able to listen. I think being a listener, we hear everyone, we don't always listen to them, but I think being open to the parties in front of you, I think that is important. Patience and being fair is probably the most important trait.
Well, that's good. Thank you for that. And you are now a member of a group of attorneys, which it turns out we have about 1/3 of our judiciary now in the circuit are women. So welcome aboard. And I always like seeing those pink highlighters in the office. Well, folks, that's all the time we have today. I think we can see that judges have a life outside the courtroom and that they come from diverse backgrounds. Folks like Maria remind us that judges are not above the law, but are of the people. Maria, good luck as you put on that robe and start your judicial career. When it comes to trial judges, the incumbents don't own this job. It belongs to the people. So good luck on your future.
Thank you, Judge Haworth.
This is Judge Haworth signing off for Law and Sarasota.
For more than 36 years, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County has worked one-on-one with estate planning attorneys and their clients to make a lasting impact through philanthropy. Stable, trusted, and knowledgeable, the Community Foundation safeguards the charitable legacies of donors to ensure that they continue for years to come. Visit www.cfsarasota.org or call 955-3000 for more information.